What is something rich people buy that poor people know nothing about? Obscure brands of regular items. I have a few well-off friends and trust fund babies, and all of them need obscure brands of regular items. They want potato chips. It can't be Lay's. It has to be an imported thin-cut potato from France that was harvested by the bay on a cool afternoon by a happy Frenchman. I remember some drama on a message board I frequented long ago, wherein a girl was complaining that there was no possible way she could live on the $2,000 a month her parents were giving her for food. I have to assume something like this was going on with her. I know she would only shop at a grocery store called AJ's Fine Foods. I believe they're local to Phoenix. My sister used to work at a very expensive hotel in London. She told me that new clients would check in, and then once they left the room, the staff would go in and inventory everything they brought with them, and where they put it and how with the help of staff they set the room up. They do this so the next time the client schedules a room, the staff can run out and buy everything on the list so the client doesn't have to have any luggage and everything is set up how they like it. They have thousands of clients, and she showed me pictures of room layouts and lists of clothing, watches, and other things that are always set up the same for the same client. Crazy stuff. A lot of people have multiple cars, but rich people have cars specifically for the weekend. During the week, you drive your average S-Class / Lexus / 7 Series that you don't mind subjecting to cruel traffic, but from Thursday to Sunday, you drive your weekend car. These fall on three spectrums: antiques, sports cars, or luxury cars. I don't know much about the antiques, but I love going for drives in the area on Fridays just to look at the Rolls-Royce Phantoms and Lumbos. Lumbos / Ferraris are usually driven by younger rich people, Arabs, and athletes, and are seen at night, usually racing. The luxury cars are the old people. Maseratis are not weekend cars, they're work cars. And every Saturday morning, there's a car show in our town. Also banks. If you're rich, you usually are a preferred customer at multiple big-name banks. They know you by name and know your family, and you can give upper-level management personal calls for help. I live in Sydney, Australia, and recently there was a big controversy about how students of two of our most expensive private schools were being secretly guaranteed spots at University of Sydney, one of the major 3 universities in Sydney, before they had even done their Year 12 finals. Everyone else in the state stresses out over Year 12 to get good grades and get a good ADR, equivalent of GPA, and these kids didn't have to lift a finger just because their parents were rich. So there's that. Growing up in the 80s and 90s as a kid, all I remember is that if someone ever owned a refrigerator that had an electric ice maker and served water, I would assume they were rich. The same was said about families with kids that owned Power Wheels or had a cell phone in their car. Shit, how times have changed. I never understood why Forrest Gump always said, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get." Every box of chocolates I've ever seen comes with a handy little diagram that tells you exactly what you're gonna get. I joked about this with a friend once, and they informed me that this was just a poor people thing. High-end chocolates don't generally come with a diagram. I'm not rich, but etiquette school. I don't remember how the conversation started, but a friend of mine from college started talking to me about etiquette school. I must have given her a questionable look because she immediately paused, looked embarrassed, and said something along the lines of, "Not everyone goes to etiquette school, do they?" The Strand, a bookstore in New York, sells books by the foot. Mostly they're encyclopedias, 14th editions, things that aren't of much value. But they have really pretty spines for making your library look pretty. Just bought a new house with a big, empty library? Just measure the width of the shelves, choose cloth of leather, and a few days later, you'll put Jay Gatsby to shame. Planning. Being rich means you have opportunity, which means you can do whatever you want, which means it feels stupid to have mediocre vacations, cars, clothes, coffee, dinners, school for your kids, etc. So you pay for planning. Real estate brokers who put you in good neighborhoods. Travel agencies that make sure you go to Venice on exactly the right time of year to have the best time. Concierge services that ensure you a great dinner every time, etc. My family had a few friends who were extremely wealthy. One woman, let's call her Jane, found out that I wanted to go to art school, so she asked her assistant to get me something to help me with my skills. I had the entire Adobe Creative Suite sent to my house. The thing is, Jane had no idea what was chosen for me. She just knew she sent me something. I think you have to be very wealthy to buy a gift for somebody and have no idea what you sent. So my answer is, rich people don't even know what they're buying. There's a service for those with enough money to pay for it that rids clients of any alcohol in their system after a heavy night of drinking by using an intravenous drip. I think it's mainly used by traveling business people who get slammed the night before and need to attend a meeting the next day. It's actually just a regular IV. Most of the effects of hangovers come from dehydration, low blood sugar, and acetaldehyde produced by the liver from what we understand. The IV. They use as glucose, electrolytes, saline, and sometimes a mild anesthetic. Like another commenter said, it's not a silver bullet, but it makes things markedly better. Air rights. It is the legal right to build on top of your penthouse. My ex-wife's best friend, call her Sally, was dirt poor, but went to Columbia U on an academic scholarship. Sally met a girl, call her Joan, who had uber-rich parents. They let Joan use a penthouse in Tribeca. Sally didn't know how rich Joan was until she was invited over for lunch on day. Joan pulls out the private key for the elevator. Sally almost dropped dead upon entering the penthouse. My ex-wife was a bridesmaid in Sally's wedding, where Joan was also a bridesmaid. Joan hosted the bridal shower at the penthouse. I was blown away also at the shower. We were hanging out on the deck of the penthouse when Joan was explaining air rights to Sally. I didn't know such a thing existed. Makes me imagine that there are probably a few more wealthy people who choose to live modestly. They may be worth millions of dollars, but it's hardly obvious, and it's on purpose because they don't want to be known for their money. Because to be honest, I think that if I had that kind of money and I could, that's what I would do. You don't want family and friends clamoring for your money. You want people you can actually connect with and enjoy you for you, if you know what I'm saying. I work for a company that sold kidnap insurance. Although the most interesting part is a majority of the time the person who is insured had no idea about it. For the people that do know and are going to a place with a high chance of being kidnapped, they're given some training on what to do. I got to spend one day trying to avoid getting kidnapped. We drove around in Manhattan in armored S-Class while random cars were the kidnappers. The instructor showed us what to look for and what to do in certain situations. Now see, that's the kind of thing I would find creepy. The anonymous regularity of hotel rooms is something I actually find comforting, because it says to me that the people that work there don't give a fuck about me or my stuff and aren't paying any more attention to it than they have to in order to do their jobs. I was a regular business flyer and in the top tier, fairly hard to get club member. Every time I flew, they had the meals I liked ready in the club room, reserved my preferred seat on the plane, and had my selection of meal ready. They even made sure to greet me by name when I boarded and have my takeoff drink ready. It was nice to have a car pick me up from home, take me to the airport, and then I just got out and went through. They looked after bags, check-in, etc., and had a car waiting at the airport to take me to my hotel at the other end. I really was flying too much for work back then. I went from a new member to top tier in 4 months. It was a record, and they sent my wife a nice gift to celebrate. Tax accountant here. When I started doing taxes for a living, my middle-income friends who all do their own taxes actually said to me, "Isn't your job kind of easy?" I do my own taxes with no problem. Yeah, sure, if you just have a W-2 and no home. That's easy. My clients have like 10 K-1s and multiple 50-page brokerage statements I have to comb through. It takes me about 20 hours to prepare their returns. There is nothing wrong with having someone do your taxes for you in that situation. Sounds like a good movie. Possible twists could be the prostitutes posing as villagers are actually other super rich people, and everyone turns on the partygoers. The protagonist is an old buddy of the billionaire, but didn't get rich, and they reconnect over Facebook or something. He gets invited along, gets told, "Don't worry, they're actors." But when all the rich friends start killing people, he discovers it's just a regular village and has to stop them. Make it interesting by not making him a cop, soldier, spy, ninja, etc. Instead, he's a pediatrician or a botanist or something. The billionaire and his buddies are really very evil people. And the man who's supposed to procure actors and hookers instead hires people that have been personally affected by these rich assholes. Now it becomes a kind of anti-purge revenge film. This is going to sound bad, but my parents own a farm in a third world country. There are about 100 or so people that work the land, buy the land, and you buy the people essentially. This is because these workers know nothing else, live in conditions of little to no electricity, salary of $1,000 to $3,000 USD yearly, and are uneducated. We make it a goal to support every child born to those workers by paying for their education to break the cycle. Edited, yearly salary, not monthly. My dad worked for that company, Chubb Insurance. In addition to fine art coverage, they offered specific rich people services like international business coverage, code for kidnapping insurance, coverage for collectible cars, watercraft, and employment practices liability for when the residential staff on your estate accuses you of sexual harassment. I wouldn't say that's exclusively a rich thing. I have my pickup, which I drive mostly throughout the week, and then I have my 750 pounds MX-5 that I drive almost exclusively at the weekend. Also, a lot of older gentlemen do this. I know a lot of 50-plus YO men that own an old Lotus or MG and use it as their Sunday fun car. I remember my parents had some old friends that lived on the good side of the city. Not super rich, but well off and in a very good neighborhood. They had some extremely soft, pink toilet paper. Not really all that weird, but I have never seen that kind in stores ever. They always had it. I'm sure they got it from a local convenience store. Just weird to me to think about that luxury toilet paper that is only sold in the good part of the city. When I was working at a cellular provider in support, I got a call from a personal assistant to a company president about the boss's phone cutting out in the middle of calls. Looked up the phone model, it was a Ver2. Did a search on the network for errors with the same brand, and found out these suck ass at handling handovers from tower to tower. Informed the assistant. He wasn't very jolly about the prospect of informing his too important to call to support himself boss that his $10,000 phone is basically a nice-looking piece of garbage. I always felt horrible growing up in NYC because everyone seemed so fucking rich except poor me. It really grated on me, but a friend of mine reminded me that I was seeing a completely skewed version of life because the wealth is so concentrated here. An hour outside of New York was way different than the US. Bergdorf's and Madison Avenue were not the center of the universe. It's another one of those vocal minority things. People notice the guy driving down the street in a chrome Lamborghini, but don't notice the guy that makes twice as much driving an old Honda. They then associate wealth with the ones they notice, and we get those annoying stereotypes that are usually from new money trying to be impressive, but not always. Disney parks have now changed their policies because of this. It used to be that disabled people and their families would go to the front of the line. Now the disabled people are offered an air-controlled area to wait in line, but not guaranteed a shorter wait. I used to be a Disney employee, and my aunt brought my 2 cousins to visit me while I was there. One of my cousins has a rare neurological disorder that, among other things, causes her to have seizures when she's in stressful environments, like Disney can be. The places they let us wait were nice, and it worked out great, but there were many more profoundly disabled people waiting with us that could have really benefited from shorter waits. It's a shame that rich people have ruined that for people who actually need it. If I were that dude, I'd build a false identity and go live in it. I mean, buy a modest house on a pleasant street and get a 5-year-old domestic car and spend weekends and odd weekdays there associating with the neighbors. Just make up some story about why you're away as often as you are. Try to get the next door neighbor to introduce you to people and hang out at the bowling alley or whatever. Wear a Timex. Take up a hobby where people get excited over, like car parts rather than buying whole luxury cars. You know, secret millionaire stuff. It's actually just a regular IV. Most of the effects of hangovers come from dehydration, low blood sugar, and acetaldehyde produced by the liver from what we understand. The IV. They use as glucose, electrolytes, saline, and sometimes a mild anesthetic. Like another commenter said, it's not a silver bullet, but it makes things markedly better. Depends where you live. There's also been some inflation since you were growing up. I wouldn't consider $100,000 per year in the Bay Area to be rich. That won't even put you in the top 40% of household incomes in Santa Clara County. You'd need a household income of almost $180,000 per year just to crack the top 20%, which I would consider well off, but not rich. At the level /U/, a 1988 Eli describes it does become a different game. You can actually buy stuff most people are not even aware of that you can buy them. One of the Koch brothers had an ATM installed at his house that dispenses $10 dollar bills, you know, for when he needs some loose change. If you have money on that level, you call the bank CEO and tell them you want it, and the bank CEO will ask you when it's okay for his crew to come bother you at home. This is what Zuckerberg said he wanted to be a billionaire for. It's a better life. There is the fact that you're never sure about people's affections anymore, and you can pretty much guess what they'll be. On the other hand, it's awesome to have some decent money. Not a joke. My cousin was working in Mexico and got kidnapped. He was insured, not sure if the company bought the policy or if he bought it on his own. The best part was the insurance company sent a team of negotiators, etc. So the family doesn't deal with the local police or figure out what to do beyond call the insurance company and let the professionals handle it. It took about a week to get him back unharmed. Wow, you just gave me a fantastic idea. I will start a company of negotiators. You want to buy a car? Hire a negotiator. Need to buy a house? Hire a negotiator. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.